Lisa, possibly the most famous painting in the world. But it's not just her beauty that has made her so popular. It's also all of the unanswered questions about her. Who was she? Why does she have this strange smile? How did Leonardo da Vinci make such a realistic painting? Well, today we are going to try and answer some of these questions. But before we start, welcome back to the channel. He used the paper drawing to experiment with proportions and poses. Then he transferred the design onto the panel using a technique called grisaille. The grisaille, the image is built up in a series of tonal values from light to dark, usually starting with a thin layer of burnt umber. At first, her hands were holding a bouquet of flowers. Then in later versions, they held a rolled-up drawing instead. But in the end, he decided against both ideas and her hands remained empty. To this day, we don't know what she's looking at. The name comes from an Italian word meaning my lady, which suggests it could be a portrait of a noble woman. We will never know why he worked on it for so long or why he never finished it, but we do know that he was obsessed with capturing the human form. The Mona Lisa was one of his greatest achievements, perhaps the greatest achievement in the history of art. There's this mystery surrounding its creation and its subject that has kept people talking about it for 500 years. Some believe it's Isabella of Aragon, the wife of the French king. I'd also like to thank my supporters for making these videos possible. I hope you enjoyed this video and learned something new. If you want to learn more about art, make sure to subscribe to the channel. Thanks for watching. Others think it's Cecilia Gallerani, the mistress of the Duke of Milan, and still others believe it's the artist himself, Leonardo da Vinci. However, it was most likely a portrait of a middle-class woman named Lisa Gherardini. If you look into her eyes long enough, though, you might just get the feeling she's looking at you. Scientists believe Leonardo da Vinci used sfumato to create the soft transition of light and shadow in the eyes, the same technique he used to depict atmospheric haze in the distance. But there is a difference. The sfumato in the eyes is softer than in the rest of the painting. Normally, objects close to the viewer appear clearer and sharper than those in the distance. But in this case, the subject is closer than the background, yet it's the background that's sharper. Leonardo may have intentionally put a subject in focus while blurring the background. Of course, this is pure speculation. There's no way to know for sure. Her dress went through a number of changes as well. First, it had horizontal pleats across the chest, but this was dissimilar to another painting Leonardo had done of a woman named Cecilia Gallerani. So he changed the design several times before settling on the vertical folds we see today. This gave Leonardo enough detail to work with before applying the colors. Does she find something funny? Is she listening to a joke? Or is she lost in thought? First version of the painting shows her with her lips together, her teeth and gums slightly visible. The next version he paints, he gives her a slight smile, but the version we see today, well, it's not really a smile at all. Her mouth doesn't even curve upwards. Perhaps Leonardo was trying to convey that her smile was fading away, appearing and disappearing like smoke, or maybe he wanted the viewer to feel uncomfortable, unsure of what to make of her enigmatic grin. Either way, the Mona Lisa smile is one of the most talked about subjects in art history. Fortunately, these preliminary sketches can't be seen anymore in the finished painting, but thanks to modern technology, scientists have managed to bring them to light. Using X-ray technology, they discovered the first sketch, the one on the paper. With infrared cameras, they uncovered the second one on the wooden panel. I'm here to show you what I've been learning. For example, there are 3 different versions of the background landscape. There was a wall behind her, and an opening in the wall framed the view of a winding path disappearing into the distance. This inspired a famous quote from the painter Eugene Delacroix, who said, "In studying the works of the old masters, I often ask myself, did they know how great an effect could be produced by the greatest simplicity? Nothing can be more simple than this wall, yet there is nothing more expressive." But again, Leonardo changed his mind. Instead of having the woman stand in the foreground, he placed her on a more dramatic angle. She sits now, and instead of having the wall behind her, she's almost completely blocked from view, which has led to many people believing that the painting is unfinished. But don't forget that this is the 3rd version of the background. Maybe Leonardo was simply happy with this level of detail. The first has the most detail. There's a winding river with 2 arched bridges over it. A road runs right up to the edge of the picture plane, and there is a town in the distance. But this didn't satisfy Leonardo, so he painted over it and started again. This time there's still a river and a bridge, but the road and the town are gone. Again, he wasn't satisfied, so he painted over it again, this time removing the river and the bridge too. And this is the background we see today. What is unusual is the size of it though. In fact, they were so expensive that it's unlikely someone like Leonardo would waste any. But when art conservators analyzed the painting, they found that there was very little paint on the canvas, sometimes less than half a millimeter thick. On top of that, the paint was applied in one single layer. This was very risky. If the artist made a mistake, they couldn't erase it or go over it with another color. They'd have to scrape off the entire surface and start again from scratch. Even worse, if a crack appeared in the wood, there was no way to fix it. So how did Leonardo manage to create such a masterpiece with so little paint? At only 30 by 24 inches, it could easily be overlooked because it's so small. In fact, when it was first shown at the Louvre, it was thought to be a work of art from Spain or Flanders rather than Italy. The reason why Leonardo chose to paint on such a small panel is unknown. Leonardo da Vinci started painting the Mona Lisa around 1503, but it remained unfinished for the rest of his life. When he died in 1519, the painting came into the possession of his student, the artist Francesco Melzi. After Melzi's death, it was passed down to another student of Leonardo's, Giovanni Antonio Boltraville. Then in 1566, it was bought by the French King Francis I and hung in the royal palace in Paris. The painting stayed in the royal palaces in France until 1797, when it was moved to the Louvre Museum in Paris, where it still is today. The Mona Lisa is an oil painting on wood. This isn't very unusual. Back then, artists painted on wood panels. What is known, however, is that the painting was done with oil paints, which were very expensive at the time. Well, before applying the paint, he made two preparatory drawings, one on paper and one on the wood panel itself. But there's even more hiding beneath the surface. Infrared cameras can also see through paint layers, allowing us to see early versions of the painting underneath the final version. In the first version of the painting, the woman was standing in a garden. He wasn't finished with the main character, though. One of the most famous aspects of the painting is her smile, or more specifically, the ambiguity of her smile. But there's another equally intriguing thing about her face, her eyes. Who was the Mona Lisa? There are several theories. Leonardo da Vinci worked for 16 years on the Mona Lisa, which means he spent almost half of his life on this painting. So what do you think? Do you believe the Mona Lisa is a real person or a fantasy of Leonardo's mind? Let me know your thoughts.